So often people speak about men who have issues with women as if these men need therapy. So men who have misogynistic attitudes, who objectify women, who dehumanize women are told to go to therapy. And this is what happens when men and boys that hold very deeply ingrained misogynistic attitudes go to therapy. This is Jamie, who's in this movie, 13 years old. This is from episode 3 of Adolescence on Netflix. 13 years old, and this is how he's treating his therapist. He's attempting to intimidate her. At other parts of this session, he's attempting to get her validation, attempting to get her to say that she likes him, that she thinks he's attractive. This is what happens in therapy, and this is why therapy is not appropriate for men and boys who have these attitudes. Misogyny is a sociological issue. That means that in order to effectively deal with this behavior in men, there have to be social consequences from other men for men who have these issues. What that looks like is a man says to another man, if you don't pay your child support, you can't hang out with me. It's not, that's not what we're going to do. If you put your hands on your wife, then no, I'm not dealing with it. I know you cheated on your wife. I'm not coming to your wedding. I'm not dealing with this. I'm not doing this because you are not treating women well. Therefore, you can't hang out with me. And then the pushback that I get from that is creating those consequences would alienate these men. I think it would require them to behave in a certain way because men crave other men's approval more so than they care about the opinions of women. Once again, misogyny cannot be treated in mental health.
If you went to school for psych or anything that you could be a therapist with, clinician, anything like that, you remember being in a class that all you did was watch videos of different therapeutic techniques and videos of different diagnoses and like all of these different videos nonstop of watching amazing therapists do their thing. Right? When I tell you, you have to watch this film and see how the therapist in this film interacts with this child. I just thought to myself the whole time I'm watching this, I'm just thinking to myself, first of all, the open-ended questions back to back, back to back, back to back. Every time he tries to project, or every time he's trying to take the attention away from himself, she gets him each and every time. But it's just the way and how intense this film is. I could have just sat here and watched that portion of the film, just the therapeutic portion, and I would have been like 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. If you're a clinician, if you're a therapist, if you went to school for this, if you are doing this in the field, I would love to know your thoughts. I want to know your thoughts about this part of the film. Please watch. I'm sure, I hope that they use this video in school. Like they have to. The acting was immaculate. Immaculate.
I recently just got done watching this show called Adolescence on Netflix 3 days ago. And it's about this little boy of 12 to 13 years old who is accused of murdering a girl his age. And it's a story of trying to figure out, did he do it, did he not do it, why did he do it, etc. Now, I saw a comment on TikTok literally tonight, and it was pretty much saying that, yes, there is a problem with toxic masculinity, but there's also an issue with radicalized feminism, and that the little girl was bullying him, and that's why this, that, and the other happened to her. And that comment made it clear to me, in my opinion, people still aren't getting the show. People are still being blinded like they would in real life. That the fact that they see a child, a little child, that they don't get that he is an incel. And the little girl was right. He hates women. Talk less of the fact that he made it very clear in episode 3 with the conversation with the therapist that he wanted one of his male peers to gather more nude photos of little girls instead of just exposing that one little girl. That the little boy should have gathered more nude photos of little girls and exposed an infinite number of little girls' child pornography photos out into the school social scene. Every time that boy has talked about his relationships with girls, wanting to be in relationships with girls, whatever, he is a predator. He only got close to that girl because he felt like she was weak and so she would like him. They've made it clear time and time again, he is a predator. I don't know how many times they need to make it clear, but he's preying on those little girls. Now, concerning the comment about whether or not she made him or prompted him to kill her because of the stuff that happened on social media, that's not true, you guys. The therapist said in that episode that he was not popular at school, to the point that they were spitting on him. I don't know about the UK. In a lot of states in the US, spitting on someone is fucking assault, all right? Like, they were spitting on him, beating on him, all this different type of stuff publicly at school, public humiliation, physical assault towards him. And to my understanding, the people that were doing that to him were boys. They were little boys. But the time he decided to retaliate against somebody for doing something to him was when it was a girl. I don't feel like people are getting what is happening here. He only targets women. He's only aggressive to women. The little girl did not force him or trigger him or bully him so bad that he decided to kill somebody. The little girl was not the catalyst, but it was not the tip of the iceberg that pushed him over the edge. No, he only ever raises his voice at women the same way he did with the therapist, but he never raised his voice at the security guard.
In my opinion, people trying to find plausible deniability as to how Jamie did not commit this crime during the entirety of adolescence is partially what's wrong with society. I'm going to touch on a couple of things. First of all, my antennas went up to Jamie as soon as he picked his father as his appropriate adult for a couple of reasons. One, his mom mentioned that his father has issues with seeing bloods get done. So why would he choose him then? He's going to be watching him have needles. He's going to be watching him get his blood drawn. Why would he pick his dad knowing that he's squeamish and has issues with that? It almost felt like a little cynical, that choice. But it's also evident of how Jamie feels about women. He doesn't care about his mom's opinion, his sister's opinion, and he really only values male opinions, which we see echoed throughout the entire series, so he picks his dad. Then we outright see the video. We see the video of him in the park with Katie. What do you mean you don't know if it's him? What do you mean? He identified himself on 7 different parts of the street corner. Would people be searching for it? Is it really him if he wasn't a 13-year-old white boy? No. Like, he was perceived as being innocent. Like, oh my God, like, could he really do that? Yes. Then we get into this scene. This entire episode was just intense. You could barely catch a breath. He hates her, okay? He hated her, to be clear, from the moment she walked in. He does not respect women who have a title. He does not respect women who are in male-dominated spaces. He does not respect answering questions to women because he doesn't feel like he should have to. He doesn't respect her because she's pretty. Immediately, that says to him that she's never had to struggle for anything. They're not comparable. They don't have the same problems. He's the victim, right? Only he's been through problems. She's also bothersome to him because she's not saying you're not ugly. Your dad's not embarrassed of you. By the way, his dad was embarrassed of him. We see at the end of the season because his dad did in fact consciously choose to look away from him as his kid was knowingly looking at him. I'd like to end by just referencing the pyramid of violence because this is a takeaway from the show on what the youth, what men are being exposed to. And Jamie wasn't like a one-off, but a path as to where most people are heading who have his views. There's many different versions of this, but at the bottom is usually attitudes and beliefs, biased attitudes, followed by acts of bias or microaggressions, verbal speak, ending with actual physical violence and genocide. In this situation, I would say global femicide and the attitude towards women specifically, the level of violence towards women globally, and just how young and quickly that's inundating our youth.
My therapist brain was geeking out the entire way through watching Netflix's new show, Adolescence. At first, like most people, I thought that this was another whodunit case, but it is so much deeper than just one crime. It's so much more about the dangerous ways that toxic masculinity is shaping young boys today and the way that social media fuels those ideologies and the systemic failures that led Jamie down this path. To understand Jamie, we have to look at both micro and macro level influences. At a micro level, we have his family, and especially his father, Eddie, who is emotionally repressed, kind of generally angry, and he struggles to be vulnerable. Jamie idolizes him, which means that he learns that dominance, anger, and control are the acceptable ways to handle emotion. Another micro level would be his school, which during the episode where the cops are visiting his school, we see that it's just kind of complete chaos. It doesn't feel like the teachers are actually focused on helping the students. It seems like everyone's just trying to get through the day, including the students. Jamie is not popular and he is not seen as sexually desirable, or that's how he perceives himself. And so he ends up falling into a group that maybe is more supportive of the harmful ideologies that, he might be finding on social media, and even has a friend that is willing to aid and abet him and hide some of the evidence. But I think the macro level is where things get really disturbing, and this is where we need to pay attention. Young boys like Jamie are being radicalized in real time every day in online spaces that normalize misogyny and violence. The rise of incel culture and male grievance narratives teach boys that women owe them something, and if they don't get it and then experience rejection or humiliation, then it's an attack on their worth as a man. I thought the show did a really good job of giving examples of those male grievance narratives, like the 80-20 rule, in which there's this idea that 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men, which leaves the other 80% of men theoretically incapable of accessing closeness to women. Jamie's interactions with Katie were framed as bullying from Katie to Jamie, which in toxic online spaces is often used to justify violence. And unfortunately, this is what happens when young boys lack healthy male role models. Instead of learning emotional intelligence, accountability, and self-regulation, they absorb harmful narratives about control, power, and entitlement. And this isn't just fiction, this is happening everywhere. I do see it in my work as a therapist, and it's scary. And I feel like the show actually did a really good job of showing this. It can happen in the most well-meaning of families. Jamie's dad wasn't a horrible person. He just wasn't super present in recent years because he's had to work more. He's definitely angry and hasn't learned how to express his emotions in a healthy way. But, just that absence and that lack of connection with a father creates a perfect storm. Jamie starts looking online for those male role models and finds these very strong presenting individuals who tout this harmful ideology. Now, my diagnostic impressions of this character are probably going to be some sort of conduct disorder, an intermittent explosive disorder, because he's really young, but he's shaping up to take on very sociopathic or narcissistic tendencies with an inability to control or regulate his emotions and a lack of empathy for other individuals. Those diagnoses are not something that someone is born with. Those are created, and this is a new way in our society that is happening as online radicalization. But beyond his personal diagnoses, Jamie's story is actually highlighting a lot of systemic failures. His school didn't intervene, his parents didn't model emotional health, and the society that he found online was pushing him toward an ideology that glorifies violence as a form of validation. The episode where he was meeting with the psychologist was extremely poignant because you can see how he tries to assert control and instill fear in her, because even though he's a 13-year-old boy, the fact that she's a woman controlling that setting is absolutely intolerable to him, to the point where he actually ends up sort of confessing. So what's the takeaway here? If we don't start dismantling toxic masculinity at its root by teaching our young boys emotional literacy, healthy coping skills, and dismantling these harmful online spaces, we are going to see more stories in real life just like this. Teaching boys and insisting that they become tough is not helping them. It's not helping society, especially to the point where they execute that toughness through violence. Boys need a safe space to feel and be vulnerable. And until we create that, we are going to be failing them the same way that Jamie was failed. I would love to hear more perceptions. I feel like there's so many different ways that we could dive into the show and the characters. And if you guys have questions or different theories on, the way that you're conceptualizing it, I'd love to hear.
Andrew Tate is not the problem. Andrew Tate is a symptom. Andrew Tate is an opportunist. He saw a gap in the market. I'm a parenting coach. Let me tell you about that gap. Also, just want to note, I'm going to use very gender normative language in this video because I'm focusing on the way society treats girls and boys differently. And if you are somebody who has questioned your gender or doesn't feel aligned to either gender, this video isn't about your experience, and we can talk about that in another video. there is a big difference in how girls and boys are treated from birth. You ever watched gender reveal videos? I hate them, because if you go to the comment section, you will see so much information already put onto that child before they even exist. And a lot of it is down to their gender, right? Because the minute a girl is a girl, she is taught how to girl. And I don't know if you've ever noticed this. When I was younger, it was magazines. It was, you know, Sugar, Ms., Teen Vogue. It was a how-to girl. Wear your hair like this. Dress like this. Listen to this music. Talk about this. This is how you talk to a boy. This is how you do. Girls are given so many options and so much information on how to be. And whilst it is very annoying that women are told what to do all of the time, and when you get older and you start to form your own identity and your own ideas and your own style and everything else, yes, it's really annoying that women, and it is part of the patriarchy, but I think it's also a response to the patriarchy, because it's like, okay, this is what you do then, and we will hold you and we will embrace you. And through these how-to girl manuals and influencers, a community builds. And so whilst you're figuring out who you are, you can at least fake it till you make it. Okay, and now we don't have magazines, we have influencers, so girls can look at female influencers and they can see what people are doing and wearing, and they can emulate it until they figure out their own style. What do boys have? I'll wait. Well, growing up, boys that I knew, they had football magazines and they had video games. And I'm not saying that girls can't enjoy football or video games, but whilst it is very annoying to be told how to girl, in some ways that's easier than nothing. So boys are left to their own devices, and if they're not interested in football or video games, how do they boy? Who's telling them what to do? Who's telling them what to think? Who's telling them what to... There was a complete lack in the market. And then Andrew Tate came along, and all the other Andrew Tate people who are talking about masculinity and who are telling boys how to boy. It's just that what they're telling them is actually really toxic. You could argue that the magazines and the social media influencers doing the how to girl stuff are just as toxic. The difference is femininity is seen as gentle. Have you ever seen a woman give birth? There is nothing gentle about that. But societally, it's gentle and it's harmless. It's how to do hair and makeup, right? Because that's all girls are. But with boys and the toxic masculinity that people like Andrew Tate talk about, it's aggressive and it's rough and it's all this old school prowess when society was different and primal. And that's really scary when someone is young and influential, you know, being influenced. It's absolutely terrifying that they would look to that. But they had no one else to look at. There is a how-to dad on YouTube, which is the most wholesome thing I've ever seen. He creates content for boys who don't have male role models, who are growing up in single-mothered families. And he, you know, how to shave, how to do a tie. And that's really, really wholesome. But I don't think it was enough. Now, the internet is flooded with, you know, the manosphere and incel content. And boys turn to that because there's an entire lack of how to boy. We can't blame the people who have taken the opportunity to capitalise on a gap in the market. What we need to blame is why boys aren't given more guidance, why there isn't more information, and also why girls are given so much information. Where is the community for boys? Andrew Tate is not the problem. Society and the lack of care, attention and community that men in general experience in modern society is the problem, and we really need to look at that.